right, this is Aaron Brightman coming to you a few hours after Sunday's game between Rutgers and number 2 Purdue. A 68-60 loss for the Scarlet Knights. Disappointing outcome. Some encouraging things that happened, but overall a missed opportunity in a game that, was a high Q1 opponent that if Rutgers had won the game would have been the signature win of the season. We know there was a lot of history coming in. Rutgers having won 5 of the last 7. The last 3 meetings at the rack, they beat Purdue. It was certainly not looking good early on. And one thing that's plagued this team, especially in Big Ten play, is just horrendous starts shooting the basketball that has just buried them in huge holes. And today was no different. And it really was a problem. I thought, it's funny when you think about not having shot makers, right? You always think kind of at the end of games, but Rutgers is really lacking shot makers, and it shows up a lot in the beginning of games and it also, I think, the lack of true point guard shows up in the beginning of games. I think that they showed today in the second half. They adjusted. They were much more cohesive as an offense in the second half. They were sharing the basketball better. They were a lot more active, a lot more movement. They were setting screens off the ball, which was great to see. They weren't just relying on that high ball screen. They were setting pin down screens for shooters, specifically Gavin Griffiths. That was happening a lot. They were just looking for more action in terms of creating better shots, where in the first half, they just get caught in that trap of dribble, take a 15-footer. And unfortunately, Rutgers has not been good at making those shots, and they got in a big hole because of it. I think they at one point missed 9 shots in a row in early in the first half. I thought that that really you couldn't afford to do that, and their defense was really good in the beginning. I thought they really frustrated Edey in the beginning of the game. And Cliff was, I thought, defensively, even though Edey finished with 25 points, first time he scored 20 points against Rutgers. I thought that Cliff was really good defensively. And I thought, they brought some help. In the second half, they were just collapsing on him and, kind of hack at Edey a little bit. But I thought that Cliff, physically was aggressive. He had energy in this game. The crowd was fantastic. They showed a lot of effort. Rebounding wise, I can't believe they out-rebounded Purdue, to be honest with you. I was not expecting that. They were +4 on the boards, and they had 15 offensive rebounds, 15-6. Obviously, when you miss a lot more shots, you have more opportunities. Purdue shot 49% for the game. Rutgers just 38%. But they had 15 offensive rebounds, and they outscored Purdue in second chance points 15-2. So without that, they wouldn't be in the game. So that was impressive. They were crashing the boards. In terms of rebounding, it had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 players over with at least 3 rebounds. Wolf and Cliff had 6. Not enough rebounds for Cliff, but Wolf and Cliff had 6. Davis had 4, so did Hyatt. And then Simpson, Austin Williams had 3. So I guess that was 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. At any rate, they rebounded well as a team. Second chance points were there. They forced 15 turnovers. They had a 17-10 edge in turnover points off of. They had 10 turnovers themselves. But, it really came down to shots in this game. Their bench got 20 points from the bench. They did some good things. Transition points, it was just 9-8 Purdue, not enough in transition. But overall, it came down to Rutgers just missing too many shots. 4 of 16 from 3 is not going to beat Purdue. They were 8 of 13 from the line. Purdue got to the line 12 more times, plus 11 in makes. They were 19 of 25. And then just 2-point range. You're 20 of 48 overall, which is not good. That's a little bit better than 40%, which is, actually better than they've been for most of the season. Layup wise, they were 8 of 18, 1 of 2 on dunks, so 9 of 20 in that regard. So that means they were 11 of 28 in twos outside 5 feet from the rim, which is not good. And, that's a lot of shots from, mid-range too. And that's been kind of, I think, even though this team struggled at three sometimes and struggled at layups sometimes, it's the missed long twos, mid-range twos that have really hurt them. And that was really the difference in the game. They gave everything else. Their defense was good. You held Purdue to 68 points. That's pretty darn good. They had 15 more shots in Purdue based on the offensive rebounds. I mean, you would have thought just that alone would have given them an opportunity to win the game. They took 19 more shots. They had 64 shot attempts. Purdue just 45. I mean, they executed the game plan. They just didn't make shots. I'm sure Mark Greenberg? He gets on me because I don't talk about how much Rutgers suffers from not making shots, and that's the only reason. That's the only, the only thing to point out in these recaps or whatever. But in this game, it's true. I mean, that was the difference. They missed too many shots, and I thought some positives was Gavin Griffiths, even though he was 3 of 11. Rutgers was looking for him as a playmaker. They were setting off ball screens. They were pin down screens. They were, he was active. He showed confidence out there. He was smiling at one point on the side. He played like he needed to play, other than he needs to make more shots. That's obvious. But, if he makes a couple more shots, this game's completely different. But I think just the fact that you saw him trying to be a factor. He hasn't been trying to be a factor. This team desperately needs a shot maker. And I think what sunk in for me today is aside from the whole Rutgers isn't shooting well, the biggest difference with this team versus recent teams is that you don't have a go-to shot maker. You don't have, years past, it was Gio, it was Ron, it was Cam. You don't have that on this team. Now, Andre Hyatt has been super consistent. He played pretty well again today. He was 5 of 12 from the floor, just 2 of 9 from 3, though. That hurt. But he had 15 points. He was active. I forget when it happened in the second half, but they reversed the ball, and boom, he had an extra step or extra pep in his step that he beat. I think it was who was it off the ball? It was Gillis, and got to the rim, finished, and got the foul. Went to the line for 3-point play. It was beautiful. He's playing with purpose. He's playing relatively within the flow of the offense. He forces a few threes here and there. But he's made some shots for this team. But he's not the shot maker he's just a different kind of player. And you don't have a true shot maker. And that's what Gavin was trying to be today. And I think even though he wasn't successful, it's a step. It's a step for this team, because if he can be somewhat of a consistent shot maker down the stretch, this team's going to be better for it. But I think, and I like all three of these players, and I'm not trying to pin it on them, but I just mean in terms of what guys' roles are on this team. You need Derek Simpson, Noah Fernandez, and Gavin Griffiths to hit shots for you. And unfortunately, they haven't been consistent enough as a group to make up for or to be enough of a presence for this team on the offensive end. And that to me is the biggest reason why this offense has struggled. And I think when you have that consistent shot making from someone, it creates priority for the opposing team in terms of how they prepare for you, how they're aware of you on the court, and what it does in terms of drawing attention away from other players like Cliff, and I think that he would benefit from that. So, and the other thing is, I mean, as a starting five today against Purdue, if you're going to beat Purdue, unfortunately, they just didn't get enough. Simpson was 4-10, 8 points. He had 3 assists, 3 boards. But Mag, 0-6, 0 points. He's really struggled now in 2 big games against Illinois and Purdue. He was on a roll there. He was averaging, I think, about 16 points a game for 6 games in a row. His last 2 games, he's really struggled. So that hurt. Hyatt gave him 15. Like I said, Cliff was 5 of 10 with 13. And then Austin Williams, he only took 2 shots. He made both. He fouled out. He struggled with foul trouble. I think the other thing with this team is down the stretch. They played super hard, but they lost a little bit of focus and a little bit of discipline down the stretch. You had that, I believe it was Hyatt that turned it over with Jones when he intercepted the pass and got the easy 2. I think at that point, it was either a 3 or 5 point deficit, and it made it 5 or 7. That was a killer with just a few minutes left. And then Austin Williams with that foul in the 3 on was it Lawyer? That was and he was struggling from the field. He was 0-3 from 3 at that point. Fouled him. He made all 3 free throws. That took it from a 3-point deficit to a 6-point deficit. Those 2 plays right there were killers. And that was just a little bit of a lack of focus and a lack of discipline that killed this team at the end. So, you can't fault the effort. This team is certainly playing hard for Peichel. I think you have to credit, the staff. I mean, Peichel, he knows how to prepare for Matt Painter's style, and he had this team ready. Now, again, they fell behind big time in the beginning, and that is a huge problem. And they have to get better shots in the beginning of games. I really believe their shot selection in the beginning of games, they can't get into a flow. They can't get into a rhythm. And they're lacking patience. They just take too many long twos early in the game, and it kills them. Once they get into like a defensive rhythm, once they start, getting a little more physical, once they kind of let the game come to them, they typically have been better offensively. But it's the starts. I'm going to do a breakdown because what they're shooting in the first 5, 7, maybe 10 minutes of games, I want to look at that versus the whole game. Because the second half, I mean, they came out, they played hard, and they played well. They were looking really good offensively at times. JaMychal Davis gave him a big lift today. In terms of what he did, what did he finish with? He had 9 points, 4 or 5 from the field, 4 assists, 4 rebounds. He was very active. Noah made a big 3 at some point. But overall, just 1 of 4. But it was that was the thing. It was like you got a lift from the bench tonight with Gavin and Davis, but you didn't get enough from your starters. When your starters give you 28, 36, 40 points against the number 2 team in the country, you're not going to win. And that was a problem. Let's see. I just want to look at other intangible stats here, see what I'm missing. Derek had 3 assists, 2 turnovers. JaMychal had 4 assists and 1 turnover. And there was a couple guys. Let's see. Moa and Andre had 2 assists each. Cliff didn't have any blocks tonight. And a couple guys had some steals. In terms of plus minus, you had Austin Williams was actually +6. Everyone else was negative. In terms of, I mentioned shooting percentages, all that stuff. But overall, I thought a few more things I wanted to cover. But I thought that, listen, this team, the schedule's going to get easier now. You have Penn State at home on Wednesday. Then you're at Michigan. I mean, you got to win those games. This team's good enough to win those games. I really believe it. This is not a last place team. I know people are saying they're going to win 3 more games, 4 more games, whatever. This team is they've had a really tough stretch, and they've played well at times. They haven't played well enough. They haven't played well long enough. They haven't put together a 40-minute game, but they've shown that they can hang with really good teams when they play a certain way. And, they had a week to prepare, and they, again, despite the poor start, they did not give up, and they came back, and they couldn't execute it at the end. They weren't sharp enough. But against other teams, this team is capable of winning games. And let's see, Edey. So complaints about Edey 3 seconds. By the way, he really is a master at working the 3-second clock. I think a lot of people confuse the rule. It's not the NBA rule. It's different. Whenever he goes into motion for a shot, into an action, the clock resets. Whenever he has a foot outside, when he lifts a foot inside, the clock resets. Whenever a teammate shoots a shot, the clock resets. So he's constantly resetting the clock. He honestly is so good at it. And I know that it looks like he's getting 3 seconds all the time and never gets called for it. But my old partner Ant, right? He's done video breakdowns. You got to check him out on Twitter. But he's broken down the differences. And I'm telling you, he wasn't getting 3 seconds tonight. There's other things you could be ticky-tack about. Moving screens is one that people complain about a lot. I didn't think there was too much of that in this game. But the 3-second rule, Edey he's not violating. He might do it here and there, but he's really, really good at resetting the clock. And the refs know that. And then they don't really pay attention to him. So he's a master at that. This is the first time. This is the last Big Ten team that the Purdue seniors won on the road. They've beaten every other Big Ten team on the road until Rutgers today. They hadn't won at Rutgers since 2018. So the entire senior class of this very good Purdue senior class, great program. Rutgers was the last Big Ten school they won on the road. That's something. The Knights of Honor, great thing for Rutgers to do. Steve Peichel, Chris Corso, the communications director, was a big part of that with Peichel. And a lot of people, Pat Hobbs, there's a ton of people involved in it. But to honor Eddie Jordan, Mike Dabney, Hollis Copeland, to have their jerseys now as part of the Knights of Honor, hanging from the rafters, joining Bob Lloyd and then their teammates James Bailey and Phil Sellers. It's just a really cool thing. The Rack crowd was awesome today. All got standing ovations, including Eddie. I tweeted, he deserved it. Those guys were warriors. They were great players. And it's just really cool to see Peichel and the program honor tradition, honor history, and recognize it and call action to it. And, he had talked about he's going to have them speak to the team after the game. They had a banquet for him last night. This is important program culture stuff. And it's great that Rutgers is doing it. Peichel just gets it. He always has. And I think it should not be, forgotten or not brought up. And I'm going to have, I've been talking to Mike Dabney. He's going to come on the podcast this week. We were trying to connect last week, but didn't work out. But he's going to be on this week to talk about the experience. And then let's see. Last thing, old man rant, get off my lawn. I spoke about this in a Q&A in a podcast, a few months ago. But in terms of the renovations, I really, really, really hope that they do something in terms of building a space for football recruits, because it really was unfortunate that there were students that wanted to get into this game that couldn't get into this game. And they roped off a whole section in the student section. They've been doing it for years. I'm not saying this is anything new, but it's just unfortunately, it's tough. It's tough. I get it. Football needs a spot. They had a big recruiting weekend. They had the team honored at the game. So, they need to have a section. But when it takes away from students being there, it's one of those things that kind of stinks. I'm not blaming football. I'm just blaming kind of the logistics of everything, and I hope with renovations that it's addressed. I hope that, and I know not everybody agrees with the recruiting pavilion or whatever. I tweeted today, maybe a recruiting pavilion and you have corporate sponsorship and, that's something, or maybe it could double as something else. Maybe when it's not used as a recruiting pavilion, it could be, used as maybe special seating. I don't know. But get a corporate sponsor, get a separate section, and let's prioritize the students in the RAC. The RAC is an unbelievable environment. And when we're not letting students in because we don't have enough room for them, that's the problem. That's my biggest thing. I'm not blaming football. I'm just saying if students that want to be there and be part of this environment can't get in, that stinks. And I'm not talking about 3,000 students want to get in and they only have seats for 2,000. We're talking in the hundreds, right? And 1,000 students wanted to get in and only a few hundred did or something like that, or a few hundred got left out, whatever it was. That's an unfortunate situation. And I hope if we're going to do renovations of Jersey Mike's Arena at the RAC, please prioritize fixing this issue, because it is an issue and it's unfortunate for everybody. So please fix that issue. Overall, my closing thoughts, there's wins on this schedule. This team has not quit. I don't think they're going to quit. Can they get, will Jeremiah Williams end up showing up? Can they get him back? That could change things if they do. Agbol, it seems close. It's been close. Hasn't, he's going to help. He'll give them at least rebounding and rim defending, a few minutes here and there. Wolf, I thought, played pretty well today, by the way. This team has shown that they can play for periods of very good basketball. It's about putting it together now against lesser opponents. Not saying opponents that are worse than them or better than them, but just better than, or not as strong as Purdue, Illinois, Michigan State. All these teams have been playing. So let's see what happens. Don't give up, please. Just come on. Let's the diehards I don't have to talk to, but people that want to write off the season or complain or whatever. I mean, let's just remember that it's not over and it's not looking good for postseason right now. But it's college basketball. And if you love this program, you love this program. And I love it to death. And, I was proud of the way they played today. I was disappointed in the result. They really just shot terribly. And that hasn't really been a difference lately. They've been shooting pretty bad most of the season now. What's going to change? Again, I like the intent of Gavin tonight. I thought that they did share the basketball. They reversed the basketball more in the second half, and they had positive results from it. So don't give up on this team. Thanks for watching and listening to the Scarlet Faithful podcast once again.